In today's video, we're going to be talking about and digging into an ETF that I have owned on and off now for several years. This ETF offers a strategy that aims to offer a high level of annual distributable income to investors. Along with that though, this ETF also offers meaningful downside protection, which means that even if the market trends down slightly, this ETF could benefit from that. Now the ETF that I'm talking about in specific is ticker symbol NUSI or NUSI, the NASDAQ 100 Hedge Equity Income ETF. Now this ETF is now provided by NUSI Investments, which is one of my favorite fund managers. The same exact fund managers that manage names like SPYI, and of course another one of my favorites, QQQI. Now even though NUSI Investments was nice enough to sponsor today's video about NUSI ETF in specific, NUSI Investments is not paying me to talk either good or bad about this ETF, but instead just to share this ETF with you guys, share with you how it works, what it has to offer, and then later on towards the end of the video, I'm as always going to give you my personal thoughts on it and share with whether or not I would buy it, because like I said earlier, I might even be holding on to some of it as of now. But one thing's for certain, I promise if you love income-oriented ETFs and higher yielding ones at that, then you're going to want to stick around until the end. Now to jump right into it, NUSI or NUSI, as you can see right here, can be found on the neosfunds.com website, and you guys of course can go through and look at this ETF on your own, do some more due diligence. But like many of us dividend or income focused investors that have been trading stocks and ETFs for let's say 5, 6, 7, 8 years now, you might be a little bit confused because NUSI has been around for a while, but it has not been ran by NEOS for all that long. Now it says right here front and center on the NEOS website, on the NUSI fund material page, it says NUSI began as a nationwide NASDAQ 100 risk managed income ETF predecessor fund, an ETF that operates since December 19th of 2019, and as of the close of business on November 8th of 2024, the NEOS NASDAQ 100 Hedge Equity Income ETF acquired the predecessor's funds, assets, liabilities, and assumed its performance, financial, and other historical information. So just like maybe some of you guys that actually have held on to NUSI for a while, which for me personally, I currently do and have held on to NUSI shares for quite some time now, well before NEOS Investments took it over. But this might come as sort of a surprise to many of you guys that NEOS is now running the fund, and there are some changes when it comes to NUSI, which we're going to go over. Now, maybe most importantly, we have to understand exactly what this ETF is, how it works, what the strategy is, and some more stats about it. So it says right here in the fact sheet, again, this is on neosfunds.com. It says NEOS NASDAQ 100 Hedged Equity Income ETF, number 1, high monthly income generation. NUSI aims to generate high monthly income by investing in the constituents of the NASDAQ 100 index and implementing a data-driven option strategy. Next is tax efficiency. NUSI utilizes NDX index options classified as section 1256 contracts, or 60% long-term, 40% short-term. And the fund managers may seek to take advantage of tax loss harvesting opportunities. So right off the bat, some of the strategy definitely crosses over at least a little bit with some of the other funds that you and I might even hold as of right now, names like SPYI and QQQI, which offers similar aspects to this, at least as of so far. Now here's where this ETF differs from some of the other ones. It says a measure of downside protection. So if you guys don't really understand what that means, I'll make it very simple. When the market goes down, or when the underlying exposure might have a red day or various red days, which is the NASDAQ 100 in this instance, well, with downside protection, that might mean that this ETF could benefit from that. Or maybe if not benefit, not necessarily lose value, etc. But let's read on. It says a measure of downside protection. The fund may offer a measure of downside protection via a constant, fully financed market hedge that seeks to reduce downside risk. Now again, just as a side note, if you for whatever reason are a perma bull, if you think that the NASDAQ, the underlying exposure for this ETF specifically, is going to keep on moving up and up and up and up and up, well then maybe an ETF with a measure of downside protection or a market hedge per se might not be the right option for you. But for investors like myself that are looking to earn a steady 6%, 8%, 10%, 12% per year and really have a low beta risk managed position, well then ETFs like this one might be perfect for us. But let's read on more. So lastly, it says professional options management, leverage the deep expertise and research of NEOS combining decades of experience managing options-based ETFs. Now another little side note about this, as of right now filming this video, names like SPYI and QQQI, which are two of the favorite income-oriented ETFs within the community. These ETFs have now been trading for around a year, which is a great milestone and gives us even more insight on what we can potentially see in the future, although of course previous performance does not indicate future performance. But at least one thing is for certain at this point, in my opinion as an investor, as a retail investor that is, and in a lot of opinions of the community, the management that NEOS has shown us, at least as of so far, has been A+, and that's coming from a large portion of the community. Now the inception date of NUSI is of course 12/19/2019, but again, NEOS took this over just a few months ago. The expense ratio is 0.68%. And looking at the performance of NUSI, there's some interesting numbers right here. I'm going to share with you the chart in a second. But basically on the 1 month, this ETF is up around 1%. The 3 month time frame up around 4%. The 6 month time frame around 8%. Year to date around 25.64%. And then inception, we have around 55+%. Now, also very important, especially to investors like myself that are sort of investing somewhat at least for distributions, this ETF does pay monthly. The distribution rate is around 8.55%, and the 12-month distribution rate is around 7.42%. Now, whether the distribution rate turns out to be 7%, 8%, 9%, that's a pretty healthy amount of yield, especially for something that has the potential to grow over time. And considering the underlying exposure is a NASDAQ 100, I personally think it does. Now, looking a little bit deeper into the strategy and talking about what this might be useful for, etc., it says potential use case for NUSI. NUSI may serve as an alternative or complement to existing income-focused investments. The fund's income is primarily generated from the sale of NASDAQ 100 or NDX index options, a source less correlated to interest rates that also offers preferential tax treatment. Now, the key features, this is also going to be very important when it comes to picking an ETF that matches your strategy. And again, if this matches your strategy, then of course it could be a good potential option. If it doesn't, then maybe not. But whatever ETFs you're looking into, you need to understand what the ETF is built to do, the strategy, the objectives, etc. Now for this, it says seeks high monthly income, which I love. Number 2, tax efficient option strategy and ETF structure. And number 3, potential measure of downside protection. Now lastly, before we go into the performance of NUSI and actually look through some of the distributions, along with my personal thoughts on it, looking at the principal investment strategy a little bit deeper, it says the fund is an actively managed exchange traded fund that seeks to achieve its investment objective principally by investing in the portfolio of stocks included in the NASDAQ 100 index and a put spread option collar, call options, long bought put options, and written sold put options on the NASDAQ 100. The fund seeks to generate tax efficient monthly income from a combination of the dividends received from the fund's equity holdings and the premiums earned from the put spread option collar. The put spread option collar seeks to generate a net credit by receiving premium from the sale of the call and put options that is greater than the cost of buying the protective put options. The put spread option collar is designed to reduce the fund's volatility and provide a measure of downside protection, but upside gains will be limited. Now looking at NUSI's performance over multiple timeframes, I personally bought into NUSI sometime in 2020 or 2021, if I can remember correctly, in a smallish position. I think across all my portfolios, I might have a few hundred shares. But since I started buying NUSI, the actual price of NUSI dropped significantly over time. And although I was paid pretty healthy distributions every month, more or less, even all that being said, NUSI was definitely not the best performing position in my long-term portfolio. But then ever since about 2022 of December, NUSI has been trending up and to the right with a few drops here and there. And along with that, it looks like nothing else is very different than that ever since NEOS took over. So since about December of 2022, NUSI has been trending up and to the right, which has been great for my personal portfolio and has basically made back all the losses that I've been holding on to. At least paper losses, that is. Now looking at NUSI's payouts, this is back in 2024. Remember this ETF costs around $26, $27 per share as of filming this video. NUSI's been paying around 15 cents, more or less, upwards to around 19 cents, more or less, on a consistent basis every single month. Now the distributions have gotten much larger. If you look at the start of 2024 all the way to the end, where we started off at around 15 cents more or less per share per month, all the way up to almost 19 cents per share. Not to mention the most recent distribution that was declared was over 19 cents, almost 19.5 cents per share. Now with those distribution sizes, it looks like the distribution rate could only grow from here, but again, we're going to have to see what happens in the future. But along with that, on the 1 year time frame, NUSI is up around 15%, and honestly for a NASDAQ 100 hedged equity income oriented ETF, that's a nice amount of performance if you ask me. So lastly, you guys probably want to know my personal opinion on NUSI, the NEOS NASDAQ 100 Hedged Equity Income ETF. If I'm going to buy it from here, if I'm going to sell it, because as I stated, I do own some shares. Well, to answer your question, if I'm going to buy it or not, well, I currently already own it. And even though NUSI hasn't been the best performer in my portfolio over the past several years, like I mentioned, it has not been the worst whatsoever, especially because of its recovery over the last several years. Now, all in all, I think it's a great option for a portfolio if you are sort of more of a risk-averse investor like myself, and you're very okay with maybe giving up some upside in return for holding onto an ETF that's going to have some downside protection. But all in all, I like what I see when it comes to NUSI, and if the price of NUSI in the future does drop below my average cost per share, I would definitely consider grabbing some shares from my portfolio, just because once again, it matches personally what I'm looking for. So now that we talked about NUSI in detail, I share with you guys what this ETF is, how it works, the performance of it, and even share with you the fact that I currently own shares of NUSI and will consider grabbing more shares in the future. I lastly want to hear from you down below. When it comes to NUSI, the NASDAQ 100 Hedged Equity Income ETF, is this ETF either in your portfolio as of right now, or what do you honestly think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this.